Thumbs up.
Okay. I think everybody who's coming is already here today. I don't think Natasha's coming, and I think Kate said she's not coming. So since everybody's here, let's not mess about. Let's get down to it. Hello, everybody. Like I haven't seen you all since yesterday. How is everyone? Everybody okay? Anybody? I think you win the award for the most avant-garde lighting today, Kelly. Most
Yeah,
dramatic.
my little ring light for TikToks.
And how did your TikTok video go?
Yeah, I did it.
That's the spirit.
I'm not famous yet, so stay tuned.
Well, you are to me.
Oh, thanks.
So that counts for a lot. That and a bus token will get you on the bus. Okay. Oh, okay. All that stuff's over here. All right. So step 2. So we should have um everybody's short list, right? Everybody should have a short list. Like it's on their phone. It's ready to go. It's easy to look at. Why doesn't everybody if you I was gonna go around the room and have everybody just kind of read their short list real quick. Is that a good idea or a bad idea? What a great idea, Evan. Okay, then let's do it. Shayna, thank you for volunteering to go first.
My short
You are
list
so
is kind
bold.
of long. Take
Yours
it
is long.
easy.
Your short list is long. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a long short list.
All right.
Take
If
it
you want to be a
easy.
show off. Okay, well, let's do this game. Every time you try to start, I'm gonna start speaking.
All right.
Okay.
Take it easy, everybody. Be willing to take on a new life. Relax. Don't try to figure it out. Don't work at it very hard. Have a truly open mind. Put your mind to rest. Resign from the debating society. Quit bothering yourself with deep questions such as which came first, deading or under earning. Wake up. Keep your mind completely open. Admit that AA, UA, DA show amazing, enormous, cosmic, colossal, grand results. Those are synonyms for prodigious, I guess.
Okay. Did you
Stop
utilize
arguing.
AI to get those synonyms?
No, I
No.
use
Okay.
the good old diccionario.
All right.
Begin to see and feel. Step 2, gently and gradually begin to infiltrate my life. Stop fighting. Look and listen for my personal quest for faith. Practice the rest of the 12 steps as enthusiastically as I can. Ask what God's will is for me. Don't tell God what his will ought to be. Reliance, not defiance. Begin to talk to God, place humility first, and accept the fact that I have a mental illness.
Okay,
What it says.
Thorough list.
Yeah.
Did anybody have anything that was, since your list was so comprehensive, did anybody have anything that was not on her list? Yes, Wendy.
I have calmly accept impossible situations,
Yes, yeah, that's a good one.
which I'm having a hard time with today.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it feels like the world is coming to an end.
does it? That's so juicy. Well, then maybe we'll use you as our sort of step 2 case study, shall we? Since it's right here, then maybe. So you can decide. We have plenty of time to think about it because we're not going to do that yet. But okay. So I don't feel like we need to go through everybody's, because it really comes down to which are the ones that are the most meaningful for you, which are the ones that are actionable for you. Let's see if there's some on here that are kind of musts. Like I feel like the first 3 are kind of critical, right? To get the intention right up front. Relax, take it easy, don't work at it very hard. And that don't work at it very hard. And I'm starting to reorder these as I'm looking at them because it's like it kind of tells the story here if you put this in the right order, right? Relax, take it easy, don't work at it very hard. Keep a truly open mind. Allow step 2 to gradually infiltrate my life. Like if you just took those and put them in that order, that's a pretty all of a sudden it's like, okay. I'm slowing down, I'm breathing, right? I'm taking it easy. I even like accept that I'm mentally ill. That's good.
That was
Allow
your
step.
one. You said that everybody should put it on their list last week. You
I,
did.
that sounds right. It sounds like something I would say. And luckily we have video to prove it. So everybody else will know very clearly whether I did or did not say that. But that I could believe that.
And sorry,
then-
Evan, real fast, since I
Oh, you
missed
weren't here last
I
week.
missed last week and I want
Yeah,
to catch
that's
up,
three
but
demerits, by the way,
I
young man. Yes.
uh-oh.
Do you have a question?
No, I wrote like a powerless list, but I thought it was like I'm powerless over whatever, under earning, you know, and I wrote things I'm powerless over, and I don't, so if you don't mind just catching me up real quick.
So then we went through step 2 like we did step 1,
Okay,
and we
12 and
created
12.
the long list, right? In the 12 and 12. And then last week we went over that. And then this week we're collating, I don't know if collating is the right word, I don't think it is. We're editing and reducing that longer list to a shorter list so that it's more bite sized so that you can look at it on your phone. So you can, you can do that work on your own. You can look at last week's video, whatever you want to do. But um, getting that list together and just starting to sort of practice it, like finding out for you what is the right the right keywords that trigger for you what the idea here is. And there's a couple things I wanted to say about this, about the steps, right? So just to sort of review, like the purpose of this, right, to live this as a way of life is to embody these principles, to practice these principles. So if we said step 1 was about, what is it? What would you, how would you, it's like, if it was about complete defeat, then how do you practice and embody complete defeat as a way of life? Now, on hearing that, you say, well, that's nothing that I'm interested in, which is kind of the first line of the 12 and 12. Who cares to admit complete defeat, right? It's the whole idea of it. Who cares to admit complete defeat? Well, that's what we're doing. We're admitting complete defeat. We're saying, I cannot solve this problem. And which is not really that big a deal. In our society, it is. But if you really think about it, is you say, my ego can't solve this problem. I'm going to rely on my divine intelligence. I'm going to rely on my deepest self. That's not that crazy. But in practical application of living in our society, it's completely 180 degrees different. And so embodying this idea of defeat as the first thing that I do and that I work on is so counter to everything we know. It's, I need to be a champion. I need to excel. I need to do well, not lay down in the ditch and go, I can't do it. It seems like quitting, right? But this is so, but we're learning to embody it. When I tell you the story of the guy who bounced off the mountain and he surrendered every muscle in his body and survived and got up and went on fine, it makes a lot more sense. You go, okay, I see why it's a good idea to surrender in those moments of stress when you're dealing with that trauma. So if we're looking at step 2 is leaving off right where step 1 ended. At step 1, we admit and we see that we are powerless, right? In other words, and we have a small checklist. So Raj, for you, in terms of step 1, you've got this powerless list, and the powerless list, it should be the things you're powerless over. You can say under earning, unrealized potential, all these things. But the deeper thing is the trauma and the parts. Like, so we're having everybody sort of like, what's the part you're really powerless over? So let's say the one that I've been working with lately is nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Okay. So we take that. I'm powerless over the idea of that. I'm powerless over that intense emotion. I'm powerless over that trauma reaction. Despite all evidence to the contrary, my nervous system feels like that's true, right? There's a little kid in there that's panicked that says nobody cares and nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Okay, so let's say this is our example case, right? And there's terror there. Okay, so I'm powerless over this terror. I'm powerless over the trauma. So here I am at the end of step 1. There's nothing I, Evan, my ego, my false identity can do to fix this. So what do I start to do? I relax and I take it easy. So if we start to translate that, we start to slow down. And so the way that we do this is kind of sort of as a meditation, right? We start to get quiet. We don't work at it very hard. In fact, we don't work at all at trying to stop this feeling. One of the litmus tests for if you're doing step one correctly and you're ready to do step two is you are not doing anything at all to fix or work on the problem of nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I'm allowing the pain of that to be there, right? And so keep a truly open mind. Begin to see, right? Accept that I'm mentally ill, right? Begin to see and feel. And this is right. So it's like it's taking us into this thing of I'm beginning to see what? I'm beginning to see these feelings. I'm beginning to feel these feelings. And what's this feeling? This feeling is one of complete terror. I'm powerless over it. So now I am not going to do anything to try to change or fix that terror. I'm not even going to say this the prayer, God, please remove this fear from me and direct me to what you would have me do. That's counter to this process. I'm not saying don't ever use that. I don't ever use it. But if you want to, you can, but that's not this, right? We're surrendering completely to the thing we think is going to destroy us, this feeling. And it says in the 12 and 12 somewhere, I think in a couple of places actually, each one of these 12 steps asks us to go against our own personal instincts. And so our instinct is to get rid of this feeling, right? And even more so, the ego behind it will gladly offer you all kinds of actions that you should take to get rid of this feeling. And so you don't want to do those things. So that's what we call the fixer. The fixer is going to come in and say, you should do this, 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 and this. And if there's one thing we abstain from in all of this, is we abstain from listening to the voice of the fixer. We abstain from doing anything, right? We don't work at it very hard. So that fits in with that, right? We don't work at trying to fix this. We don't. We give up. And so now what this leaves you with, it leaves you with this incredibly not good feeling, is almost always what it is. This incredibly not good feeling. And it's just sitting right there in your chest or in your solar plexus or in your stomach. And so we just allow it to be. And we don't do anything. And the more that we allow it, the more presence grows up around it. And so I guess you couldn't say this is in right here in the book, but I've developed this practice of sort of allowing this to be and feeling it, bringing compassion to it. Right. And so what I've discovered, and it doesn't say it in here, but in the actual process, especially when I went through this really horrific bottom, I had no choice but to feel the terrible feeling. Because all of my will to resist fighting, I had been fighting this feeling my whole life. And I lost the power to do anything about it. So I had no choice but to feel it. So I was lucky, right? I didn't have the energy to fight it. And so then it passed through me. I got to the other side of it and I was much better because I'd gone all the way through that feeling. So here's another feeling, that I probably could try to fight, but I've gotten so bad at trying to fight my feelings. And I've kind of gotten so good at living these principles of allowing of seeing and feeling. And so you've all been here with me on the calls. I think all of you have, where we sat and we've walked through a feeling and gotten to this side. So if I sit with this feeling of nobody wants to hear from me, it's this feeling of terror and I allow it to be. And then sort of I have my process for this. So I guess we have this recorded. So this is kind of a good thing. So I'll walk through it and then I'll invite somebody to see if they want to kind of go through it. But I sort of quickly go through this kind of little bit of a meditation. And this is kind of my set one. When I do this, with other people, it's kind of always unique. I never know what it's going to be, but I have kind of a set one, which is I breathe into this feeling. I breathe into nobody wants to hear what I have to say. And the feeling underneath that, and that's what we're most concerned with. We're concerned with the feeling is one of absolute terror. I'm going to be thrown away. Nobody wants me. And I feel that, and it's always good to sort of touch, where do you feel it in the body? I feel it very much here in my chest, and it feels kind of like an ache, a terrified ache, terrified, lonely ache. So I'll say to it, I'll kind of start to talk to this energy that I'm allowing to be. I'm not trying to change it, but I am trying to give it compassion. So I'll say to it, it's okay that you're here. It's okay for you to feel everything you're feeling. And my goal here is to feel this as much as I can. So the things that I say should help me to really kind of exaggerate the feeling, not exaggerate it, but to feel it as deeply as I can, as deeply as what's there. And so that feeling is absolute terror of this child. So notice I'm not doing anything to get away from it. I'm not doing anything to say, oh, you know what you should do is you should, read this article or read this book. It would help you so much. None of that. It says in the big book, we cease fighting anything or anyone. And I would add to that, especially our feelings. So I'm not fighting this feeling. I'm not fighting that trauma response. I'm not fighting the terror. And as I do, inevitably what will happen, I'd say maybe 1 out of 20 times you won't get to some relief. It all depends on how fresh this is. The newer an opening something is, hold on for a second. The fresher it is, the more difficult it'll be to separate from it. The longer you've spent time with it, the easier it'll be to be relaxed. And on a certain level, you could say this is just making friends with this feeling that you've been running from so long. You've made it into a monster, or your body's made it into a monster. And you're just now saying, okay, I'm not gonna, it's like the person that you thought was the bully at school, and then you're like in the same like summer camp, and you get to know them, and you're like, oh, they're not so bad, kind of thing. It's exactly like that. It's a perfect analogy. Um, so as I'm feeling this, I go through it, and so I'll say, I'll say I love you. Sometimes I'll cue people to, I'll say I love you to that part. I see how it reacts. If it fights, then I know it's not in a situation where it wants to change very much, and that's okay. And I let the part know it's okay. You don't have to be any different than you are. If I say I love you and he gets mad, it just means that's how long it's been neglected. So that's not a problem. And then a lot of times I'll cue people to like, hug themselves, right? To hold themselves and to feel that kind of physical contact, right? Because a lot of us weren't given that sort of regulated nervous system to be next to, who could handle our pain. And so we're starting to give that to these parts. This regulated nervous system, our calmness, allows the part to feel its feelings without fear that everything's going to collapse, right? So we're sort of being the rock that this wounded part can start to feel safe with. And by holding it and hugging it, sometimes that really helps. Sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on you. And then a lot of times I'll say, okay, let's take this energy, this terror, and let's put it on a pedestal above me. And I say to the part, I say, thank you for being my teacher. You're showing me a different way to be. We're acknowledging, just like in step one, that this whole thing is here to change us for the better, to put us in touch with what's real. And then a lot of times I'll let that part talk. I'll let that part. And if I let that part talk, so I speak from that wounded place, I'll say, leave me alone. Get away from me. I don't want you here. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be near anybody. Right. So that's obviously a part that's in pain. Right. So I'm kind of touching this part's pain from as many different angles as I can because I want to feel it as fully as I can. Because if once I feel it, it starts to lose its power. And even as I'm sitting with it, a lot of space is coming in. And for me, and I'll just share this with you, this has become the most powerful thing for me to do is because the thing that makes this the thing that makes the part let go kind of the quickest, and we don't really want that to be the goal. Like if your goal is to get through this as quickly as you can, you're going to stay stuck in it. It has to be really understanding the part that's hurt. If you come in with this agenda, that is going to mess you up. But the thing that helps the most for me is being able to have the part know that it's understood, and heard. And so I will talk to it, right? Because it's happening in my body, I can feel exactly what it's feeling. So I can mirror back to it what it's feeling. And when I do, it generally feels very heard. So this is something you can try for yourself. So now I'm going to talk to this part that's in pain. I see that you're so terrified you can hardly breathe. I can see that you're scared to even try and breathe. It's like you're trembling. It's like you can't even see straight. You're so terrified. And I'm listening to see if the part agrees. And generally, in this practice, at least for me and for some other people that I've tried it with, because the part feels so heard and seen, it really that's what these parts tend to want. They want to be heard and they want to be seen. And that helps them to sort of know that they're loved more than anything. And so invariably what happens, and this is the important part, right? What's step two? It's came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. So that's right there. It's in the step. As I go through this, just even going through some of that fear, it only knocked it down about 50%, but there's all this presence that's there now that wasn't there before. And that presence is that God energy. It is that healing energy that shows up because I am not doing anything, right? I'm doing nothing but sort of holding this part. I'm not fixing, I'm allowing it to be. And that changes the equation. That love and that compassion changes things. This is what we did not get. So now I feel that spaciousness. I can breathe a little bit more easily. I'm a little bit more calm. I'm a little bit more sane. And that is how you know that you have practiced step two correctly. You come out a little more sane. That's your sort of test. If you're still just as freaked out as the time you went in, generally what that means is this is a newer, a fresher, a wound that you've just started to tend to. And it's like a wild dog. You're trying to feed it, it's trying to bite you. And with those, that's the most difficult, and that's the beginning of this process of hitting a bottom with something. And you just, the fresher it is, the more uneven, the more jagged it is, those are the tougher times. As you sit with it, you will slowly go through the stages, and there are very distinct stages. One is like this full-on rage denial thing where you can barely get to it. Then you're able to sort of be with it and touch it. It's very uncomfortable. And then there comes this kind of middle phase where it's like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I can be here. And then there's like, oh gosh, I feel very connected to it. I feel okay. And then there's the stage where it's like, wow, this has a lot less power than it used to, but I can still kind of feel it. And then there's the part where it kind of releases and it's resolved. So there's like 6 or 7 steps in that, starting from I'm totally identified. And by the end of it, you're not identified anymore. It's like almost like it wasn't there. So again, the best example of this is that movie, A Beautiful Mind, where the characters of his paranoid fantasies and delusions are all kind of sidelined and waiting. Spoiler alert. And they're sort of toothless and powerless. but they're there. And so we don't necessarily get rid of negative thoughts or this negative idea. It's just that when it comes, it has no power over us. We see it and we go, ah. Like if I were to say, Raj, you're irresponsible and you take shortcuts and you don't do stuff right, you might have some reactions to that. You might have some feelings about that. If I say, Raj, you're made of green cheese, you probably don't have any feelings about that. You just go, oh, well, that's completely neutral statement to you. You're saying it to me like it's a bad thing, but I don't have any, there's no wound there around that, right? So that's what these things become. These things become neutral, and that's what it says in the big book, right? The liquor becomes neutral. So then that's when you're ready for step 3. When you have some clarity, now you can listen, you can hear a little bit better, and then you say, God, what is your will for me? The biggest mistake I see people make is when they're still in this panic and they're trying to decide and fix. That's the spot that we don't want to be in. That is the opposite of surrender. Okay. Wendy, do you want to sort of try and do this and walk through this and maybe get some relief on the other side, or no?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Thank you for being willing. That's great. Well, there's two Cheryls here, I would think. One of them has to be an imposter.
Uh-oh.
You're echoing too.
I know.
Maybe just turn off the audio on one, or something. Do something.
There.
Well,
Technical.
glad to have you back. Were you ever gone?
No, my camera wasn't working, so I switched.
Oh, I see. Okay, well, it's nice. It's nice to have it so we can see you. Okay, Wendy, so just give us a little bit of the sort of hold on, I just had a really great interaction with somebody this week where we talked about how much the disease wants to enthrall you in a story. It's constantly pulling you back into the story. And what I would encourage you is to come back to the emotion and forget the story. Be with that emotion, track it back to early ages and sit with it in this way. That will deal with your problem in a much better way than trying to deal with the problem. Dealing with the problem is you know what it is? It's inefficient. It really is. It's inefficient. So let's see if we can do that here. Let's see if we can take this problem and get it down to what the problem is really about, and then deal with what it's really about. And then from some kind of clarity, maybe you'll have a more clear head to go, oh, here's how I actually deal with this problem, instead of from the crazy ego place trying to sort out a problem. And I don't know what your situation is, so maybe that doesn't apply, but let's just see. Okay, so what's going on?
Well, so it kind of started with not being able to get anything done today.
Okay.
And, I had a whole bunch of ideas about things I might accomplish. And
Sure.
I ended up doing the bare minimum, which took me about an hour. And then I just couldn't get myself going along, kind of at the same time where I kept telling myself, you need to get going, you need to get these things done. When are you going to get them done? And it felt like, or feels like it's all, some of it is sort of mood related about what's going on in the world right now. And, that like my stocks are tanking and and, Trump is I mean, what's going to happen to Ukraine and on and on and on. The stuff that's happening right now is terrifying to me.
Okay. Well, let's just start from a basic thing, right? So this is a very common thing, right? When people talk about the stuff that's happening, one of the ways to sort of get back to sanity, right? Because what's one of the parts of step 2 here is accept that I'm mentally ill. Okay. So you're having this fear reaction to what's happening in the world. But what I would suggest to you is one of the simplest ways is to look around you, look in the place where you are, and realize that's the only thing you know for sure that's actually happening in life right now.
Mhm.
That's it. That you know for sure. Now, there may be other things happening in the world, but you don't know that they're happening for sure.
Well, I know my stock values went down. That I do know for sure.
But in the time that you just said that sentence, they could have gone back up higher. So you don't know where your stock values are. And the only way that this isn't true, right? That just what you're looking at, what you're seeing, what you can touch, that's what's real. We know that's real, is your mind tells you something.
Hmm.
And so really that's the issue. The issue is what your mind is telling you. Now, let's say your stock values go down. If you are completely taken care of in this lifetime, then it doesn't really matter. Right? You're not concerned about your stock values going down. You're concerned about whether you're going to be okay or not. Right?
Right.
Okay. So then another one, these are just kind of a couple of practical things just to sort of get us in reality. Because once you understand that everything that's happening to you that's upsetting you is happening in your mind, then we can begin to deal with what's happening in your mind. Because we're not going to sort out the issues of politics and all that to make you feel okay. And any of these things that are happening doesn't make you need to feel not safe. Your mind is taking the events and different things and spinning it into this cocktail of suffering that you are drinking, so to speak, right? Because that's how this works. Right, because what does it say? I think that's how we started. Calmly accept impossible situations. Right, you're not able to calmly accept them. Right, you're sort of right. You're not. You're like, there's this agitation happening. The other thing I noticed that that was kind of part of setting this up is a voice came into your head, and that's what all this is. These are all just voices in your head. I think you even said it up at the top. You said something along like the world is falling apart. Now, that kind of language is pretty
It was
dramatic.
It was a little over dramatic.
Right. But again, your nervous system, that's the world that your nervous system is living in. That's how your nervous system feels. Now, it's not entirely accurate because this was the end of the world. The world has ended 100 billion times before now because we've had all sorts of things happen, right? So the world's not ending any more than it did last Thursday today, right? So there was one other thing you said. Oh, I have to get all this stuff done. I need to get all this stuff done. This one is so common that I just want to point it out for everybody. And this, comes in line with step 3. But was that God telling you that you needed to get all this stuff done? Aha.
No, because I did it.
Aha.
I did finally around 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
I did a two-way prayer and asked higher power what I should do with the rest of the time that I had before a friend comes over here at 7. And I was told, vacuum the dog hair off the couch and go take a bath.
God, what's such practical information.
Clean the
You,
kitchen a little.
you see, but and that felt somehow manageable, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, doable.
Yeah.
So you see why I recommend to do that first thing so that you get the manageable things that you need to do. And you see what happens kind of when you don't. Like this is a great example today, Wendy, of how not to do it. Right? Right. To sort of leave it to your own devices, fill your head with this gigantic to-do list, feel overwhelmed, not get anything done. Versus if you start the day and you get your kind of 3 manageable things that there is to do, and you do those, then everything else you do is a success. And if you don't do anything, you had a rest day and it's okay. Right. Okay, but let's start, but see, so all of that's semi-practical, right? It's like just to sort of understand that our mind runs away, and from a practical standpoint, to understand that that's all this negative fantasy, it's all this trauma, really, working on us, right? These are all conditioned responses. And there's a very, one way of saying it is that these spaces that you're sort of entering into today are comfort places for you, protected places, places that there's this kind of weird addiction to, right? So let's see if we can get in there a little bit. So, all right. So it sounds like the main thing is you felt like you did do what it was you were supposed to do. Or is it the world?
I feel like I'm numb and just a little paralyzed.
Okay.
That's how it feels.
Okay, good. So we'll start there because that's the one thing I want you guys to understand. You always just start where you're at, right? So
Mhm.
you're feeling numb and a little paralyzed. Okay. So do you get that you're powerless over those feelings?
In theory.
So
I get that I'm powerless over what's going on in the world. That I get.
yeah, but see, for me, that's a bit of a half measure. Like everybody and his uncle goes, yeah, I'm powerless over the world events. I'm powerless over people, places, and things. That's fine. This sort of deeper layer that we're going to here is that you get that you're powerless over your reactions to these things.
Yeah.
You're
You know,
not in charge.
I do get that.
Yeah.
I do know that. I guess I believe that, but I maybe don't entirely believe it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I
That's
feel like
fine.
there's something I could be doing about it or should be doing about it.
Well, I would submit to you that that's the fight you were having all day,
Yeah.
right? You were fighting the notion that you're powerless over this and maybe losing the fight. You know what I
I
mean? Right?
lost the
It's like,
fight. Oh,
yeah,
I lost the fight.
right. Um, so then the real question is what's the really big feeling underneath this? And it feels to me like, and again, this is the most important part because you saw what happened is we're sort of collating the facts, etc. But then what I did is I just started to drop down and get below, okay, what might it be, the head into the heart, right? I started to shift gears, and that's part of this embodying the steps. It's part of embodying this, right? I'm getting down to what is it that you are really powerless over? And to me, Wendy, it feels like there's a really big fear here. Is that
Well,
fair to say?
yeah.
Okay. And
Of
what's the fear of?
that I'll never amount. This just came up. I wasn't
Good.
actually thinking this. That'll never amount to anything.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. That sounds right. That fits the feeling that I'm feeling, right? It's like I'm never going to amount to anything, which is why the voices today are coming at you saying you got to do something, right? Because otherwise, right? See, so you're trying to act your way out of the feeling of I'm never going to amount to anything. And so this is where if you can start to get down to the feelings instead of getting caught in the fixer, that's actually getting caught in the fixer. And you spent the day trying to fix this fear inside you of I'm never going to amount to anything by doing.
Or
And it's
not
just
doing.
doing or not doing. But a lot of the not doing came from the stress of trying to do. Because I used to be somebody who was very like depressed and didn't get a lot done. And you know why I was that person? I felt lazy and because the to-do lists and the burden of how much I felt that I needed to do was so great that I collapsed under the weight of it is really the thing. And since I don't have that as much, I'm still a bit of like I get stuff done, I do stuff, but I have a really healthy balance now. But so usually when we can't do stuff, it's because the load's too heavy, the load and the burden of expectation, which you had a lot of today because you were so afraid that if you don't get something done, you're not going to amount to anything. That's a wound. So, okay, so there we've gotten down to the pain. So now this is a part you want to write down. So again, all of this stuff is that we're looking at here is this is how you work the steps in this way of acknowledging and seeing that you're powerless over your trauma. So I'm never going to mount anything. You're writing that down. You're naming this part so that you can come back to it and you can tend to it, or you can just forget about it and it will just come back and haunt you. These are your choices. Right. So I recommend writing it down and being aware of it. We began to see and feel, we began to look and listen. Okay. So now, if you go back, right, if you go back into your childhood, where did you feel a similar feeling to this?
Hmm. Wow, good question.
Thank you.
I don't know. It's,
Okay.
I mean, I do feel like, that I was told you, you know, you're a child, how could you possibly know anything? Even when I was in my 30s by my mother, but certainly when I was a kid, you know.
Okay. That really fits. And also, your mom is pretty harsh, wasn't she?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that's a little homework for you to do. It's kind of outside the scope of us trying to sort this out right now, but that's these things. Look, when you have these feelings when you are an adult, it is always a replay of the past. So
Hmm.
your feelings today about what you did or didn't get done have nothing to do with today. Absolutely 100% zero, and have everything to do with the fact that this little girl has felt for a long time like she's terrified she's not going to amount to anything.
Mm.
Now do you guys feel that? Now we're at the end of step 1. We have, and you are powerless over that. You see that? Like for however many decades this has been going on, and you have been fighting with this fear, and you have not made progress on it really. It's kind of the same place as it was. And you want to get down to it and feel it, right? And get in touch with where you felt that when you were a child. That's a little extra homework. But for all intents and purposes, it's like, okay, it's here, and we know that it has a many decade history. That's one of the signs that we're powerless over it. And we also know you've been fighting it for so long. It's one of the other ways that we know we're powerless over it. So now the question is do you want to keep fighting it, or do you want to sort of let go? And if you're really willing to let go and not work on it, then we can go into step 2.
Mhm.
Okay, so now step 2. So we relax, we take it easy, and we don't try very hard. So that's to me, that's always the litmus test. Can I stop trying to fix this feeling? This is how I know that I've really let go, is I allow myself to feel it. Because everything else I've done up to now is some version of not feeling it. Do you get that?
Mhm.
All the strategies that you've employed to deal with that feeling. I mean, do you get the scope of that? For
Mhm.
50 years, you've tried every possible different permutation of not feeling this. Strategies, doing this, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to do that, to not feel it. And now finally, we're going to sit down and we're going to let ourselves actually feel it. And that's going to shift the energy, because that's the one thing that we haven't tried,
Mhm.
right? Okay. All right. So now we just want to sort of close our eyes and we just want to breathe. And you guys can, it's helpful in this space if you guys do one of two things, because you're all sitting there, right? This is good practice for you to touch things. So either you can kind of feel what Wendy's feeling, you resonate with it, or you're feeling something similar that's yours. You can sit with your feeling around it and bring presence to it. And that presence will actually help Wendy as she walks through this, right? That extra presence will create this healing space. Okay. So, so breathe into this feeling, breathe into this fear of I'm not gonna amount to anything. Where is that living in your body?
Mm. I don't know.
Okay, good. That's good. And that's fine, right? And it's like, it's all fine. Whatever shows up is fine. Okay, well, let's do a little scan of your body. Is it anywhere in your toes or in your feet?
No.
No. And
Mm-mm.
is it anywhere in your calves?
No, I don't think so.
No. And it's probably not in your thighs or your butt or anything in there, right? It's like the lower half of the body. Usually we're not feeling too many emotions.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
These are the things that carry us around, right? Okay, so we're trying to tune in. We're trying to listen to the fear of I'm not going to amount to anything. So, how much of it that would you say is kind of living in your shoulders? You know, in those tense part of your shoulders where we're holding all day long.
Not so much. I'm starting to, as we're talking, I'm starting to think that it's right in my belly.
Okay, and that sounds a little bit right. Let's just kind of cruise over to your belly and let's just kind of tune in and see, does that kind of fit? It's like, is that kind of energy sitting in your belly? And is it belly or is it solar plexus? Solar plexus a touch higher, right? Just below your chest, solar plexus, or does it feel more belly?
Eh, I guess more belly. I
Okay,
mean, I can
good.
also feel it in my jaw, but that could, just be like grinding my teeth because of.
Well, generally what happens is there's this kind of protective gate mechanism, like, and usually people have it around here. So if it's in your jaw, it's usually some form of suppressing something you want to express, right? So that fits. And a lot of times, like for me, I get stuff in my neck. This is a sort of, I'll feel it here to prevent me from feeling it lower in my body. So the fact
Mhm.
that you're feeling it in your gut, let's go there. Let's spend some time there. And what does it feel like? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel tight? Does it feel warm? And does it feel electric? What? How would you sort of talk about it physically?
I'm just starting to like all of a sudden just thinking about how much I've struggled with it's called microscopic colitis
Mm,
in my adult life. It's not the same as regular colitis. It's at a cellular level,
okay.
inflammation. So, yeah, it feels like it's it's trying to protect itself is
Mm,
what pops into my head.
okay. Good. Good. That makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, on a certain level, that's what all of this is. All this stuff is very protected. So I think I've shared in this group or some damn group, right? It's like we're all glaciers and we're all in the process of being melted.
Mhm.
And especially here inside the context of this step thing, very much so. This is where the most melting is happening. And that's a good thing. Right. So, okay. So I'm going to tune in a little bit here, kind of into the belly and sort of kind of focus in there because we kind of know this energy is around there. And to me, it feels kind of heavy and dense.
Mhm.
Right. And so what's good about this is we're helping each other get there. And that's good. And the fact that you're sort of, because as much of this is a spiritual awakening and it's a surrender, it's also there's a bit of a practice to it, right? You get better as you do it, of
Mhm.
tuning into your body. And you've protected yourself from these feelings, or your system has protected you from feeling these feelings. So they're not just right there and accessible to you. And that's fine. Okay. So, but we're going to just start to sort of like talk to this a little bit and just sort of let it know, let this part know, let this energy of fear know that it's okay to feel whatever it's feeling. Just giving it permission that however it's feeling, wherever it's feeling it, it's okay. And now breathe into your stomach there. And that's good. And I want you just to picture wrapping this energy in your stomach, just kind of wrapping it with light and love. Just picture this cloth, right? This golden cloth, right? That particles of light are falling off, and you're just wrapping this energy around this part, and you're just giving it this kind of love. And now, kind of picture yourself kind of holding it right? A little bit like a baby, and just rocking a little bit back and forth. And it's the energy you're connecting to. And you're bringing this energy of acceptance. And whatever you're feeling, wherever you're at with it, is fine because you're doing the action of bringing compassion and bringing awareness to this, which is all any of us can do. And let me ask you, as you're touching this, are you starting to feel this energy a little bit more in your stomach?
You know, there's an interesting thing that is coming up for me is that I'm not, it's not that it's hard to do this in front of other people. It doesn't
Mm,
feel that way.
yeah.
What I feel is that I shouldn't be taking up all the space
Oh,
in this
g-
room,
good.
and
Does
that
any,
every,
yeah, does anybody mind? Is anybody, yeah, I didn't think so. Yeah. It's like you're helping everybody, right? It's like, right, when you go to see a movie, one of the things that's so valuable about a movie is these actors have trained themselves to go to places where normal human beings aren't willing to go. And so they give you permission to feel. And so right now you're helping everybody in the room because they're sort of more comfortable. They can sit back and it's easier for them to get in touch with whatever it is they're getting in touch with. You're providing that for them.
well, I hope that's true.
Yeah.
I do hope
I mean,
that's true.
I've
But
been in
also,
these.
I think it's attached somehow to this as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. No, that's a protection mechanism.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not worthy of the spotlight
right,
or. Yeah.
right. Yeah, definitely. Definitely, it was a thing my mother used to say all the time if we were, at somebody's, like if we had to go visit a relative, which she hated having to do because she didn't like people. But what she would always say was, we're taking up too much of their time. We should go now,
Right.
basically.
Right. Right. And so, again, one of the things that makes this challenging, right? And so, but it's the same exercise for anybody. It's like you set your timer in the morning for 5 minutes and you're sitting with this part, and whatever you get is what you get. There's no competition, there's no doing it wrong. There's just you bringing loving compassion to these parts of yourself. And so, what will happen is all the different defense mechanisms, right? Whether it be numbness or um, whether it be I'm taking up too much time, all different ways to get you to not go here because your system is afraid of going here. It's afraid of this feeling. And so you want to be gentle with that. You don't want to try to force your way through and say, well, I'm going to get down to this feeling. You're working with that, right? So we could even take a right turn. We won't do it today just for time. We could even take a right turn and we could sit with that part that feels like it's taking up too much, which is the most common thing in the world when someone's in the seat that you're in. I've been in every seat at this table, and I'm telling you, you're giving a gift to these people to allow them this spaciousness. And I've been where you are, and everybody feels like I shouldn't be taking up as much time without question, right? So you're doing everything right. But so now I just want you to just notice because we've spent a little bit of time with this. We spent at least 5 minutes, right? Note, do you feel a little bit more grounded having touched this?
A little bit.
A little
I
bit.
think this is a biggie. I think
Was
this
it
one's
right?
a biggie.
Right. And that's fine. But the fact that you feel a little bit more grounded, that's the same thing as saying you feel a little bit more sane.
Yeah.
And so the more you come here and the more you touch this, the more sane you will get. Pretty, it's pretty much that simple. Now you may have to come back and it may take you 6 months to sort of get to the other side of this feeling and to really, by really being with it, right? Because there's a lot of barriers to it because your mom was someone who was harsh, right? So you're not used to opening up and you did not have a safe space for yourself to feel.
Mm-mm.
You just didn't, right? And so slowly over time, you're creating that safe space by this surrendering, this letting go. But that whole voice now of, well, you should be doing this and should be doing that, doesn't that feel a bit less relevant?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
It
feels,
also really sounds like that really sounds like my mother.
aha,
That really
aha,
sounds like her now that I think
right?
about it.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly. So that's why when a voice comes to you, you have to stop and go, wait a minute, is this God? Because if it's not, I probably shouldn't listen to it. Because if it's not God, it's this horrible demon voice from the past taking you in the direction, and look where you ended up by following that voice, by believing that that voice had some credibility. You ended up down in the dumps.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all these things seem so real and so credible, and none of them are. They're just your past bringing you back into these bad past feelings that you're so used to. But as we bring consciousness to them, they lose their power to do that. Right. So this process, pretty similar for everybody. Everybody has a slightly different take on it, and everybody's going to do it slightly their own way. But that's the process. Getting down to the feeling, because the feeling attached to that thought, notice it was a very strong feeling of fear, and it was a thought, I'm never going to amount to anything. That's what we call a part. And a part is its own separate disease that you are powerless over, and we're essentially working the steps on each and every part. Okay, so that is kind of a couple of practical sort of demonstrations or ways of to kind of do that. It's sort of a very simple process, but not necessarily easy, because you have to sit with this pain that you've been running from for your whole life. And the question is, are you ready to do that? Are you ready to give up and to admit complete defeat? And if you are, every time you do that, you got exactly what you're supposed to get. You got a little bit more sane. Every time you go through it, you'll get a little bit more sane. And then eventually one day you'll be sane. But not too fast, right? Not too fast. All right. Any questions or thoughts, observations, anything anybody want to share? It's would have been a good time if I could do that little cricket thing, where they're like, but I can't. I don't know how to do that. No? Okay. I'm glad to see that you guys have all absorbed it perfectly. Good, good. Why don't we pray out today? Shall we pray out together? Since we're doing this inside the steps, why don't we do just the very simple we version of the Serenity Prayer? How would that be? Okay, so everybody unmute and we'll say it together. Which is always just so weird and awkward, but let's do it. Okay. God,
God,
Grant
grant us
Grant us the serenity
to
to
accept
accept the things
we
we cannot change,
courage.
courage to change the things we can,
and
wisdom to know the difference.
know the difference.
And I'll just, as a sort of parting note, right, just share with you guys because this is what I've done and this is what I have been doing for the last 5 years. And the incredible peace that shows up for me. It's so great. And, they say, like, so, when you look for a sponsor or whatever, they should have what you want. And I don't know how many of you can sense what it is that I'm feeling. Who knows? I don't know. But I would say pretty much everybody wants what I have. I've lived that life that we've all lived, which is so filled with struggle and strife and fears and all of that. And it's just not the place that I'm in 95+% of the time. I'm just not. And so there's nothing different or special about me. I'm sharing with you what I have done and how it evolved through the steps for me. And what I've seen just since working with people is that this does work for others as well. You know what I mean? And so this kind of sanity, this peace, and this happiness is a very real thing. And it really is very simple. It just comes down to showing up for the process, and you don't have to be a rock star at it. You just have to show up just a little bit every day. Our higher power doesn't ask too much of us. Okay. Thank you all.
Awesome.
Have a great one.
Thanks,
I'll
Stu.
see you the next time I see you.
Thank you, Evan.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.